Mr. Creepycore here. Subscribe our channel for daily creepypasta stories.
I took a job cleaning crime scenes. One room keeps reappearing. A Mr. Creepycore original creepypasta. I need to tell someone about this before I lose my mind completely. Before the room finds me again. My name is Marcus Chen, and for the past 8 months, I've been working as a trauma scene technician for BioClear Solutions, a crime scene and biohazard cleanup company operating out of Portland, Oregon. It's not the kind of job you dream about as a kid, but after my construction business went under and my wife left, I needed work that paid well and didn't ask too many questions about gaps in my resume. The $40,000 starting salary plus hazard pay was more than I'd seen in years. The training was intense, euro 40 hours of classroom instruction and hands-on practice. They taught us about OSHA regulations, EPA compliance, blood-borne pathogen protocols, the proper use of PPE, and how to identify different types of biohazardous materials. We learned about the stages of decomposition, how to properly dispose of regulated medical waste, and the psychological techniques for maintaining emotional distance from the scenes we'd encounter. My instructor, a weathered man named Ray who'd been in the business for 17 years, had one piece of advice that stuck with me: the bodies are gone before we get there. We're just cleaning up what they left behind. Remember that, and you'll be fine. For the first 3 months, I was fine. Better than fine, actually. There's something oddly meditative about the work once you get past the initial shock of it all. You suit up in your Tyvek coverall, pull on your nitrile gloves, fit your N95 respirator, and you become someone else. Someone clinical. Someone who can look at a bedroom wall splattered with arterial spray and see only a technical problem to be solved with hospital-grade disinfectants and enzyme cleaners. I've cleaned up after suicides, homicides, unattended deaths, and accidental overdoses. I've scrubbed brain matter off bathroom tiles, removed decomposition fluids that had seeped 3 layers deep into hardwood floors, and bagged contaminated belongings that families would never want to see again. Each scene tells a story, but we're trained not to read them. We're trained to assess, contain, clean, disinfect, and dispose. We're trained to be invisible. The trouble started with apartment 4B at the Riverside Gardens complex. It was a Tuesday morning in late September when I got the call. Ray sent me the address along with the basic details: unattended death, approximately 2 weeks of decomposition, police had cleared the scene the previous evening. Standard protocol. I'd done 3 similar jobs in the past month alone. I arrived at 7 a.m., parked my company van in the loading zone, and wheeled my equipment to the 4th floor. The smell hit me in the hallway, that sickeningly sweet odor of decomposition mixed with something else I couldn't quite identify. After 2 weeks, the gases and fluids released during putrefaction create an unforgettable stench that clings to everything. I'd smelled it before, many times, but this was different. Underneath the familiar rot was something almost chemical, like burning plastic mixed with formaldehyde. The apartment manager, a nervous woman in her 50s named Mrs. Patterson, met me at the door. Her hands were shaking as she handed me the keys. "I need you to be thorough," she said, not making eye contact. "Very thorough." The tenant, Mr. Reeves, he was a quiet man. Kept to himself. We only found him because the neighbors complained about the smell. I assured her we'd restore the unit to a safe, habitable condition and sent her on her way. Standard procedure: we always work alone or in teams, but never with the property owner present. It's better for everyone that way. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The apartment was small, a studio layout with a kitchenette, bathroom, and sleeping area. The victim had been found on the bed, and the outline of where the body had lain was still visible on the stained mattress. The decomposition had progressed to the point where fluids had soaked through the mattress, through the box spring, and into the carpet beneath. The walls showed signs of insect activity, and the familiar outline of decomposition, what we call the body shadow, had stained the surrounding floor in an irregular pattern. I began my initial assessment, documenting everything with photos for insurance purposes. The bedroom would require complete removal of the mattress, box spring, and carpet. The walls would need specialized treatment with enzyme cleaners to break down the organic matter, followed by industrial-strength disinfectants. The bathroom would need standard deep cleaning. The kitchen appeared untouched. But it was the closet that caught my attention. The sliding door was partially open, and inside I could see a small room, not just a closet, but an actual room that shouldn't have existed in a studio apartment this size. I stepped closer and peered inside. It was maybe 8 feet by 8 feet, with pale yellow walls that looked water-damaged and old. The floor was covered in cheap linoleum tiles, several of which were cracked or missing. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling, and even though it wasn't on, the room seemed to be dimly lit by some source I couldn't identify. In the far corner sat a metal folding chair, and on the chair was a brown paper bag. The layout made no sense. I'd reviewed the building plans before arriving. Studio apartments at Riverside Gardens didn't have extra rooms. But there it was, undeniably real, smelling of mildew and something else I couldn't place. I should have reported it. Should have called Ray and asked what to do about an undocumented room in the cleanup site. But I was 3 months into the job and didn't want to seem incompetent. I told myself it was probably a maintenance closet or storage space that wasn't on the residential floor plans. I decided to check it out after I'd finished with the main scene. The cleanup took 6 hours. I removed the contaminated materials, bagged them in red biohazard bags for proper disposal, treated all the affected surfaces with enzymatic cleaners, and followed up with hospital-grade disinfectants. I used my UV light to check for any biological material I might have missed. The fluorescence reveals blood and other fluids invisible to the naked eye. Everything looked clear. By 2 p.m., I was exhausted, dehydrated, and ready to finish up. I'd been putting off the strange room, but I couldn't leave without at least documenting it. I grabbed my equipment bag and stepped through the closet door. The temperature drop was immediate. It must have been 85 degrees in the apartment, but the yellow room felt like it was barely 60. My breath fogged in front of my face. The smell was stronger here, that chemical odor I'd noticed earlier, mixed with dampness and decay. I approached the metal chair and the paper bag. Through the bag's surface, I could see the outline of something inside. Something roughly the size and shape of a human heart. I should have left. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to get out of that room, to leave the bag unopened, to forget I'd ever seen this place. But part of my job is dealing with biological materials that make other people uncomfortable. I convinced myself it was probably just trash, maybe old meat someone had forgotten in there. I opened the bag. Inside was a spiral-bound notebook, its pages yellowed and brittle. I picked it up carefully, and as I did, something slipped from between the pages and clattered to the floor. A key. Old, brass, the kind that might open a door in a house built 50 years ago. I flipped open the notebook. The handwriting was cramped and frantic, different styles and different pens covering the pages, but all seeming to say the same thing over and over. The room always finds you. The room always finds you. The room always finds you. Hundreds of times, filling every page. But on the last page, in fresher ink, was something different. To whoever finds this, I was like you. I thought I could understand it. I was wrong. The room isn't a place. It's a pattern. Once you've seen it, once you've been inside, you're part of the pattern. You'll clean it again. And again. And again. Each time in a different location, but it's always the same room. Always the yellow walls. Always the chair. Always the bag. You can't escape it. You can only pass it on. I'm sorry. I tried to warn the last one, but he didn't listen either. Maybe you're smarter. Maybe you'll find a way out that I couldn't. It was signed J. Reeves, the name of the man who died in apartment 4B. I dropped the notebook like it had burned me. This had to be some kind of prank, some sick joke left behind by a disturbed individual. But as I backed toward the door, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. On the wall behind the chair, scratched into the paint in dozens of different handwritings, were names and dates. Patrick Morrison 1987. Sarah Chin 1993. David Kowalski 2001. Jennifer Martinez 2008. Thomas Brennan 2015. James Reeves 2024. And below them, fresh, the paint still slightly damp where something had carved. Marcus Chin 2024. I ran. I didn't pack up my equipment properly, didn't document the room, didn't do any of the careful closing procedures I'd been trained to follow. I just ran back to my van and drove straight to the office. Ray listened to my story with an increasingly grim expression. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Did you take anything from the room?" he asked. I reached into my pocket, feeling the weight of the brass key I'd unconsciously grabbed. "Just this." His face went white. "Throw it away. Throw it away right now and don't ever go back to that building." But I couldn't. I tried. I threw the key in a dumpster behind a gas station on my way home. When I got home and reached for my house keys, the brass key was there on my keyring. I threw it in a river. It was back in my pocket an hour later. I buried it in my backyard. It showed up in my work bag the next morning. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, I've been on 5 different cleanup jobs. An overdose in a motel, a suicide in a suburban home, a homicide in a warehouse, an unattended death in a nursing home, and an industrial accident at a chemical plant. Normal jobs. Standard procedures. Except they all had the same room. Not similar rooms. The exact same room. Same dimensions, same yellow walls, same water damage patterns, same missing linoleal tiles in the exact same configuration. Same metal folding chair. Same paper bag. And each time, when I'd open the bag, I'd find the notebook with one more name added to the wall. At the motel, it was hidden behind the bathroom door. At the suburban home, it was in the basement behind the water heater. At the warehouse, it was inside a storage container. At the nursing home, it was beyond a maintenance closet. At the chemical plant, it was in a section of the building that wasn't on any of the facility maps. I tried to tell Ray again, but he wouldn't listen. Told me I was experiencing stress-related hallucinations and that I should take some time off. But I can't take time off. Because I know what happens when I don't show up for work. Someone else gets sent to the scene. Someone else finds the room. Someone else's name gets added to the wall. I've tried to document it, to take photos, to bring evidence back with me. But cameras malfunction in that room. The pictures come out blank. And anything I take from there, the notebook, samples of the wall, even pieces of the broken linoleum, they all disappear within hours. The only thing that stays is the key, and I've stopped trying to get rid of it. I've done research. I've found records going back decades of trauma scene cleaners who disappeared or quit suddenly. Patrick Morrison was found dead in his home in 1988, cause of death listed as undetermined. Sarah Chen vanished in 1994, never found. David Kowalski lasted until 2003 before he walked into traffic. Witnesses said he was talking about the yellow room before he died. The pattern continues with each name on that wall. I think I understand it now. The room isn't just a place, it's something else. A space that exists between cleanups, between deaths, between the mess we make and the order we try to impose. We spend our careers cleaning up after death, removing the evidence that people lived and suffered and died. But the room is where all of that goes. All the blood we've scrubbed away, all the decomposition we've remediated, all the lives that ended in violence and loneliness and pain. It all goes somewhere, and that somewhere is the yellow room. And once you've seen it, once you've stood in that space between life and death, between mess and clean, between existence and erasure, you become part of its pattern. It will find you at every scene. It will wait for you in every building. And eventually, like everyone before me, I'll have to make a choice. I can keep cleaning. Keep facing that room over and over until it drives me mad or kills me, like it did to all the others. Or I can pass it on. I can leave something for the next person, a warning, maybe, or just my name on the wall. I can become another entry in the pattern, another name for whoever comes after me to find. I got a call this morning. New job. Apartment 7C at the Riverside Gardens complex. Different building, different floor, but the same address. Mrs. Patterson's voice on the phone was wrong, somehow too flat, too rehearsed, like she was reading from a script. She said they need someone to clean up after an unattended death. A quiet tenant. Kept to himself. My GPS is showing the drive will take 20 minutes. I'm in my van now, suited up in my Tyvek coverall, my equipment loaded and ready. I have my nitrile gloves, my N95 respirator, my enzyme cleaners and disinfectants. I have my UV light for finding biological materials invisible to the naked eye. I have my camera for documentation, even though I know the photos won't come out. And I have the key. I know what I'm going to find when I get there. I know there will be a scene to clean, there always is. And I know that somewhere in that apartment, hidden behind a door or a wall or a mirror, I'll find the yellow room again. The chair. The bag. The notebook. The names on the wall. I've thought about running. About just getting on a highway and driving until I run out of gas, then walking until I can't walk anymore. But I know it won't help. The room doesn't exist in space, it exists in pattern, in repetition, in the endless cycle of death and cleanup that I've made my profession. This is what I want you to understand. If you work in trauma scene cleanup, if you clean up after deaths for a living, if you spend your days removing the evidence that people suffered and died, be very, very careful about the rooms you enter. Because some rooms aren't rooms at all. There's something else. Something that's always been there, waiting in the space between life and death, between mess and clean. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you enter it, you can never really leave. I'm pulling into the Riverside Gardens parking lot now. I can see Mrs. Patterson waiting by the entrance, her hands folded in front of her, her face expressionless. She looks exactly like she did 3 weeks ago. Exactly the same. Down to the position of her hands, the tilt of her head, the way she's not quite making eye contact with anything. The room is waiting for me. I can feel it. I'll clean this scene. I'll do my job. I'll remove the contaminated materials, treat the surfaces, restore the space to a safe and habitable condition. I'm good at my job. I'm thorough. I'm professional. And when I'm done, I'll find the room again. I always do. Maybe this time will be different. Maybe this time I'll find something in the notebook that the others missed. Maybe this time I'll understand the pattern well enough to break it. Or maybe I'll just add another date next to my name on the wall. I'm getting out of the van now. Mrs. Patterson is walking toward me, and her mouth is moving, but I can't hear what she's saying. All I can hear is the sound of my own breathing inside my respirator, and underneath that, from somewhere very far away, the sound of a metal folding chair scraping across linoleum floor. The room is calling. And I have to answer. Because that's what we do. We show up. We assess. We contain. We clean. We disinfect. We dispose. We make it like it never happened. Over and over and over again. Forever. If you're reading this, and you work in trauma scene cleanup, and you find a room that shouldn't exist with yellow walls and a metal chair and a paper bag in the corner, don't open the bag. Don't look at the notebook. Don't touch anything. Just close the door. Walk away. Find another line of work. Because the room always finds you. And once it does, you'll never stop cleaning.